Hello and welcome to episode 25 of Under Your Spell, a Willow and Tara fanfiction podcast. This is Shayna, and for this week I will be reading My Favorite Christmas Story by Sheena M.F. Fan. If you enjoy the story, please let the author know. I have her information in the show notes. And if you would like to read a story for the show, that offer is still open, and you can email me about it at underyourspellpodcast@yahoo.com. This story is another shorter story, and I will just be needing one episode to read it. The summary for My Favorite Christmas Story is: I met her up in Sunnydale in 1999. She had a crooked smile that put me in a trance. December 24th at 11:45 when I finally gained the courage to ask her to dance. Based on the song His Favorite Christmas Story by Capital Lights. My Favorite Christmas Story. In a way, I guess it's a little strange. I've lived in one place my entire life, but growing up, all I ever wanted to do was travel, explore the world and all its secrets, meet new people and learn of their cultures, discover more about my powers. Yes, I am a witch. I first learned of my potential about halfway through high school. I vividly remember the overwhelming thrill of floating my first pencil. It became harder to focus on my classes after that, because the urge to make the textbooks dance and to manipulate the chalk into writing humorous things on the chalkboard was just too tempting. It wasn't long after my first dabbles into magic that I met Oz. My friends, Xander and Anya, and I were out at the Bronze. It really was the only place to go in Sunnydale, and I noticed this extremely handsome guitarist for the band playing that night. I was much too shy to go and talk to him, though. Every time I was around a boy I liked, I found it hard to say anything cool, or witty, or at all. I could usually accomplish a few vowel sounds, and then I had to go away. It was extremely frustrating, let me tell you, and this led to me being single all my life. Up until that night. I got lucky. Anya had dragged Xander off to dance, and during my alone time on one of the maroon-colored couches, he approached me, a fascinated sparkle in his eyes, and he took a seat next to me. "Animal cracker?" he offered, holding up the box to me. I felt my throat go dry for a moment in nervousness, but surprisingly, I was able to get out a clean, polite, "No, thank you." The smile on his face didn't falter as he reached in the box and grabbed one for himself. "Oh, look, monkey," he stated, "and he has a little hat and little pants." I couldn't help but giggle at how cute he was acting. "Yeah, I see. The monkey's the only cookie animal that gets to wear clothes. You know that?" he continued after I decided to snatch one of the crackers for myself. "So I'm wondering, do the other cookie animals feel sort of ripped? Like, is the hippo going, 'Hey man, where are my pants? I have my hippo dignity. And you know that monkey's just, I mock you with my monkey pants.'" I could feel that wide smile spread across my face. The playful look in his emerald eyes suddenly morphed into adoration. "You have the sweetest smile I've ever seen." A blush washed over my cheeks as my heart slammed against my rib cage. I knew right at that moment that he had me. Oz and I developed a romantic relationship not too long after that day. Even after I learned that he was a werewolf, and after he learned that I was a witch, we were completely comfortable with each other. We had this bond of mutual trust that just couldn't be severed, and the butterflies he gave me whenever he was around, I never wanted that feeling to go away. Our relationship was unbreakable. It lasted all the way through high school, up until college. Until that one fateful night, of course. We were all at the Bronze, Xander, Anya, Oz, and I, and a new band was playing that night. The way Oz was staring at the lead singer, the unmistakable lustful attraction I saw in his eyes, the anxiety that piled in my stomach was incredible. Most of me wanted to believe that it was just a one-time thing. But it wasn't. Oz always seemed to be at the Bronze, listening to her band whenever he could. Then they began talking to each other, and soon enough I caught them after a long night of sleeping together. He was traumatized at the sight of the tears rolling down my cheeks at my heartbreak, and tried to convince me that it wasn't what it looked like, and blamed it all on animal instinct, as this girl was a werewolf too. But it didn't matter. He cheated on me after everything we've been through, and that was that. He lost control later that day. He transformed into a wolf and killed the other girl, after she let the wolf consume her, to protect me. The next morning, he made a confession. Veruca was right about something. The wolf is inside me all the time, and I don't know where that line is anymore, between me and it. And until I figure out what that means, I shouldn't be around you. And then he left. Just like that. I haven't heard from him since. I waited for him for a long time. The months trailed by ever so slowly without him, but a part of me always hoped that he would come back to me. I was a fool to believe he would. A few dramatic things happened to me after that. I realized I was gay, for one thing. Maybe it was because of Oz's departure that quaked inside me a huge distrust of men. Or maybe it was simply because the thought of girl-on-girl action really turns me on. Either way, I know what I am now, but I don't regret a second of the time I spent with Oz. I wouldn't be the girl I am today if it weren't for him. And second, I dropped out of college. I worked so hard to get there, but I found it wasn't offering me what I wanted anymore. I didn't want to see the world through books. I wanted to see it with my own eyes. I decided that after the Christmas Eve party at the Bronze tonight, I was going to leave and travel the world. It's all I've ever wanted to do with my life, so I was excited to finally get to experience my dreams. It's a bit funny, though, that I spent so much time fixing my hair and makeup and readjusting my green strapless dress for the party. I don't even celebrate Christmas. I'm Jewish, so it's weird that I'm even going. But I don't really view Christmas as a holiday that only certain people can celebrate. I see it as a beautiful time for family and friends to forget their differences and bond together. That's what I saw this party as. A chance for me to see the people of Sunnydale one last time before I left. I ran into Xander and Anya practically the moment I walked in. Xander looked so cute dressed in a tuxedo like that, and Anya looked gorgeous with her curled tresses and long aquamarine silk gown. I really hoped they understood how lucky they were to have found each other. After mindlessly talking with my friends for a couple of minutes, they eventually gravitated towards the dance floor to sway to the gentle holiday music, leaving me all by my lonesome. I didn't really mind too much, though. It gave me the chance to truly appreciate my surroundings. The walls were decorated with Christmas lights, and wreaths were hung everywhere. There was a large Christmas tree in the corner with gifts underneath. It boggled my mind for a moment who the gifts were for. And a beautiful angel was shining on top. A lot of people wore faces that I recognized back from Sunnydale High. As much as it was comforting to see them again, this comfort was laced with bitterness concerning all the students who didn't get to be here. Shaking the depressing thoughts from my head, I continued to look around. Christmas-oriented streamers hung in dangles from the railings on the second floor. Many people in the building wore Santa hats, including the bartenders, and Hold on. My green eyes darted back to the bar. There was a girl there, her back to me, ordering a drink, hugged within the most beautiful scarlet dress I've ever seen. My gaze shifted from her to the bar and back to her again, and I suddenly found myself feeling very thirsty. My feet moved of their own accord, absent-mindedly taking slow steps toward her. As if sensing my approach, her head jerked to the side so she could look over her shoulder. The moment her eyes met with mine, I froze mid-step. Goddess, I was completely mesmerized. Her eyes were just so blue, and her red lips so full. They matched her dress, and her skin so flawless. She was the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I felt this warmth spreading inside of me as her sapphire eyes ran me over again and again. They shined with a genuine curiosity and adoration, maybe even respect. But then it was over. She shuddered visibly and snapped her head back around, breaking our mind-numbing stare down, and it was over. I couldn't tell how long I just stood there staring at her back. Minutes ticked by, maybe even hours. Was music even being played anymore? Was anyone other than us even in the building anymore? Maybe, maybe not. It really didn't matter. Oh God, the warmth wasn't going away, and I didn't want it to go away. I haven't felt like this since I first met. No. Somehow I knew that this was even more powerful than when I first met him. Goddess, I wanted to talk to her so badly. Meet her, know her, ask her to dance, on dates, her interests, her backstory, everything. Come on, feet, move! But wait, what if she's not interested? What if she rejects me? What if she thinks I'm weird or disgusting or doesn't swing that way? No, no. She stared at me for a long time. She must have felt what I did. How could she not? Man, why is this so hard? It's high school prudeness all over again, I whined to myself. No, come on, Willow. Get in the game, gather your courage, take control. Just go up to her and say something like, "Hi there, want me to buy you a drink? By the way, your lipstick really matches your dress. It's pretty. Would you like to dance? And I was wondering, maybe you'd want to go out sometime for coffee, food, kisses, and gay love?" I shook my head back and forth, my body stiff and frozen to the ground as I tried to rid myself of any nervousness. Maybe I should just use magic to make myself more attractive or more confident or something. No, this should be sweet and genuine. Asking someone out should never have fakeness etched behind it. I did a quick check of the clock on the wall. It was 11:15. Was it always that late? Or that early? Goddess, what if she has to leave soon? No more waiting. I'm going to seize the moment. Gathering up all my courage, my feet finally took brave steps and approached her. I nearly tripped when I planted myself onto the stool next to her, noticing the surprised jump her body made at my presence. I quickly shook off my embarrassment and greeted her. "Hi," I began pathetically, gazing into her eyes, as I immediately cursed myself for stuttering. Can I buy you a drink?" She looked at me silently for a few seconds, each second causing my heart to pump faster, before gesturing to the full glass she already held in her hand. Okay, I finished weakly, looking away from her in defeat, causing her to do the same. God, I was horrible at this. I knew she had already ordered herself a drink before I even sat down, but I didn't want it to let it end there. I couldn't pass this opportunity up. I twisted my body around on the stool so I could stare at her fully. Noticing my movement, her sapphire eyes flicked upwards to me again. Her shy gaze made my breath hitch for a moment before I said, "You know, your dress is really pretty, and your lipstick really matches it." She blinked at me a couple of times, the fingers of her free hand unconsciously playing with the folds in her red dress. Nervous giggles suddenly bubbled from her throat as she gripped her drink tighter. I thought it was adorable. She obviously wasn't used to being complimented like that. Thank you," she stuttered shyly in the sweetest voice I've ever heard. I like your dress too. The shade of it really goes with your eyes." "Thank you," I replied, a genuine smile misting across my face. "Hey, we're quite the festive gals, aren't we? You all being in red while I'm in green. We practically are Christmas, only in human form, of course." I was proud of the gentle laughter I had erupted from her. It gave me the final burst of courage that I needed to take the plunge. "So, I was wondering," I started nervously, gaining her full attention. I took a deep breath before I continued. "Would you like to dance? I mean, like, on the floor? Over there, to the music, with me." I shakily offered her my hand. Her orbs widened dramatically as she stared at me for a long moment. I held my breath in anticipation. When she lowered her head, her long blonde tresses curtaining her face from view, nearly all of my hope had plummeted into the vast abyss of nothingness. It seemed like forever that I waited in suspense for her answer. I was close to retreating my hand and running away. But when she finally raised her head, my heart melted. The cutest blush illuminated her cheeks, and a blissful, crooked smile was on her face. Her eyes honestly looked like authentic, sparkling sapphires. Never in my life have I seen something so beautiful. She gave me a gentle nod, and then shyly placed her hand in mine. A tingling spark shot through my veins, and I'm sure she felt it too, as I guided her onto the dance floor. I stopped when I came upon an empty space between all the current dancers. I smiled at her and wrapped my arms around her waist, letting a friendly bit of space exist between us. She returned my smile and gently wrapped her arms around my neck. We slowly moved back and forth to the beat of the smooth, cheery holiday music, neither of us speaking for a while. We just stared deeply into each other's eyes, communicating that way as we enjoyed each other's company. The moment I heard her voice try to speak words, that adorable stutter still kept them in her throat. I moved myself just an inch closer. I softly stroked her sides with my thumbs, urging her to continue. She spoke again after gathering her thoughts. I could sense you the moment you came here. Not gonna lie, that caught me off guard, almost to the point where I lost my footing, but I made sure to keep myself steady. I frowned gently for a moment, thinking, searching her face for answers, and let a smile warm my features once I figured it out. So, you're a witch too? Her expression shined with that beautiful crooked smile as she nodded. Honestly, I've never met another witch before, I admitted, gazing at her in curiosity. How long have you been practicing? Always, she blurted, her eyes dashing away in embarrassment at her outburst before correcting herself. I mean, since I, was little. My mom used to. She trailed off for a moment, her brow creasing gently before she met my eyes again. She had a lot of power, like you. I began to smile and chuckle nervously, uncertain yet flattered that she thought so highly of me. I denied her acquisition, though. I mean, really? Me? Powerful? I've only been practicing witchcraft for a couple of years. I'm sure there were many people out there who were much more skilled in this area than me. Oh, I don't have much in the way of power. My words came out faster than I expected them to. Really, I mean, most of my potions come out soup. Besides, spells going awry, friends in danger, I'm definitely nothing special. No, you are. My heart skipped a beat as her kind, affectionate words filled my ears. She was blushing, obviously not used to voicing her opinions like that, which made my cheeks splash with color at how truthful she was being with me. She wore a shy, crooked smile, her blue eyes glittering with fondness. I smiled back warmly, loving the happy feeling that nestled itself inside of me just from being near this girl. And in one moment, all of that happiness just consumed me before I could do a thing about it. Her flattering words, her angelic face, being held in her beautiful arms. It was just too much. I couldn't hold back. Without hesitation or warning, I closed the distance between us and kissed her. Her lips were so soft. Goddess, they were so soft. I wanted to keep kissing her forever, until I realized something. She wasn't kissing back. In fact, I don't think she was moving at all. Shit, I just ruined all my chances, didn't I? Damn it, why did I do this? It was obvious it was way too soon to kiss her. It was way too bold of a maneuver. She's gonna look at me like I'm some kind of snake now. I pulled back in fear, already missing the warmth of her lips. I opened my eyes slowly, unsurely, my stomach twisting uncomfortably once I noticed her widened orbs. They were probably open like that the whole time. I felt her arms tense around my neck, and suddenly found that I couldn't meet her eyes. Anxiety and panic built in my heart, as I knew I had just blown away my chance I had with this girl, who made me feel wonderful just by looking at me. I was such an idiot. But then, she did something I didn't expect. One of her hands maneuvered from behind my neck to gently cup my cheek, causing my eyes to flick upwards and meet hers. Her gaze was hesitant, but determined, as she stroked my cheek delicately, as if to gain confidence. Then, without speaking a word, the hand still positioned behind my neck pushed my head downwards as she tenderly captured my lips with her own. My eyes went wide. Her hand was still caressing my cheek, and her lips were so soft and warm as they danced across my own. A grateful sigh stuttered from my lips as I finally responded to her kiss, pressing back against her in adoration. We both pulled away at the same time, blushes on our cheek as we met each other's eyes. I probably looked like an idiot with that wide, toothy grin spread across my face, but my expression drew out a shy, crooked smile from the blonde girl, so it was okay. Besides, the look in her eyes, there was something so reassuring in them now, something so pure and loving that I don't know how I didn't notice it before. I don't know what it is, she began so softly that it was on the edge of a whisper. But when you look at me like that, and smile at me like that, you make me feel special. I smiled warmly at her. How do you do that? Magic. Her ruby lips curved into a beautiful smile, and never in my life have I ever seen someone look so content. Any space between us was banished. She rested her head upon my shoulder and held me like I was gold. I responded immediately, my arms holding her warm body tightly against mine as I allowed my eyes to close. It wasn't too long after that I could feel our magical energies began to intertwine. The strength of mine and the purity of hers began to overlap each other, filling in the gaps the other one had, before swirling into our cores. We slowly began to float from the ground, locked in a mystical trance of understanding and happiness. It felt like our souls had merged as one, and there was no doubt in my mind at that moment that I belonged in this girl's arms. We fit together perfectly. I couldn't even comprehend how long we just talked, kissed, and danced the night away. It felt like an eternity of bliss, heaven even, but it still ended all too soon. Oh no, she spoke suddenly, breaking out of our hold to take a look at the clock on the wall. I took this time to glance around the room to note that only a few people remained. Xander and Anya were gone too. It must have been quite early in the morning now. There was a frantic look in her eyes when we locked gazes again. My dad expected me home hours ago. I really have to go. I opened my mouth to speak, but she stepped forward and held both my hands in hers before I could say anything. That gentle, crooked smile was on her face again. "Thank you so much for a wonderful night," she told me, a gentle blush on her cheeks. It really was something magical. "Will I ever see you again?" I couldn't help but ask. The way I felt around this girl, I really didn't want it to be a one-time experience. She nodded slowly, carefully. "I hope so." She kissed me tenderly, almost lovingly, and I got to hold her in my arms one last time before she departed, the image of her beautiful crooked smile blossoming behind my eyes forever. My expression saddened when I realized I never caught her name before we said our goodbyes. I stayed in Sunnydale for a week after that fateful day, even though I had promised myself to leave the night after the party. But I just couldn't help myself. I really wanted to run into that girl again, and then this time remember to ask her for her name. Unfortunately, this only depressed me all the more when I didn't find her. I searched the streets, stores, and restaurants, day and night, I might add, but I couldn't even find a trace of this girl's existence. I really was stupid for not asking her what her name was. Honestly, isn't that what everyone does during their first conversation with someone? I was so upset that it felt like my head was going to explode. I calmed down a bit on my last day in Sunnydale, though, after I had packed the last of my belongings in my suitcase. I sat on my bed with my eyes closed, remembering about all the good times I had in Sunnydale with my friends, about the beautiful, blonde, nameless girl whose red lipstick matched her pretty dress and whose crooked smile put me in a trance. I was so deep in thought that I nearly jumped out of my skin when I heard the doorbell ring. I rushed downstairs, not really knowing whom to expect, and had to hold in my gasp when I opened the door. "Hey," Oz greeted me quietly. It was uncomfortably silent for a long time after I invited him in, but eventually we got to talking. He told me all about his adventures after he left a couple months ago, and how he found a cure to his werewolf problem. It was only then that I noticed the charms wrapped around his hand. In a way, I was a bit jealous. He's gotten to travel all around the world. He's had this whole mind-body transformation, while I've just been stuck in the same old Sunnydale. But then he told me why he came back. He said that he knew what he put me through, and that he was a different person now. He said he was sorry for making me wait so long, and that he could be what I needed now. His words made me remember what loving him was like. They reminded me of the butterflies I felt whenever he was around, the innocence of our first kiss, the bliss of the first time we made love. They reminded me of the heartbreak I felt when I caught him cheating on me. But that was all in the past now. "I missed you, Oz. I wrote you so many letters, but I didn't have any place to send them, you know?" My voice was weak and choked. He wasn't looking at me. I couldn't live like that. "It was stupid to think that you'd just be waiting," he replied tensely, hopelessly, still not looking at me. "I was waiting." I paused when he finally met my gaze. "I feel like some part of me will always be waiting for you. Like if I'm old and blue-haired and I turn the corner in Istanbul and there you are, I won't be surprised, because you're with me, you know?" I tried to force a smile. "I know," he sighed, defeated, and I could feel my heart clench. "But now is not the time, I guess." I shook my head and said, "No." And then my tears started flowing. I just couldn't stop them. He reached over to me and we embraced for a long time, a final reminder of the warmth we felt back when we were together. He left right after that without saying a word. I sat on the couch for a while, crying silently, before I brought my suitcases downstairs and loaded them in my car. I locked my front door and took one last lingering look at my house before I took off to follow my dreams and see the world. Oz wasn't mine anymore, and I wasn't his. It was just how it was supposed to be. My heart belonged to the nameless girl with the crooked smile. I accomplished in seeing quite a lot in only the few years I've been traveling. I've met lots of kinds of people and taken hundreds of thousands of photos. Don't want to forget any of the wondrous things I've seen. It really has been the vacation of a lifetime. I tapped into my witchcraft a lot more too. I learned lots of new and handy spells, ones that I could use to help people. But unfortunately, as time went on, I began only using these spells for myself, fixing things to my liking. It wasn't good for me, and soon enough, the dark magic took over me. I was crazed, drunk with power, and yet all I wanted was more power. It was hard to come down from that, but eventually I did once I realized how much wrong I was committing and how that power was doing nothing to benefit me or those around me. I was so terrified of the overwhelming power I possessed that I actually gave up magic for a while, a couple of months at least. It was hard, getting used to doing things the natural way. Too hard. In fact, up to the point where I realized that ignoring my magical potential was nearly as bad as letting it consume me. I had to find a balance. I began training under the guide known as Alwyn, and she taught me a lot about my powers and how to control the darkness I had within me. She gave me knowledge and helped me understand my power. And she taught me how to fly. Do you know how freaking awesome that is? But I tried to keep the flying to the bare minimum, though. Didn't want to start relying on it too much, 'cause what if all the magic was suddenly drained out of the world and I lost my powers? The chances of that happening are next to impossible, I'm aware, but you can never be too careful. I still keep in contact with Alwyn. I just don't communicate with her nearly as much as I used to. My powers continue to expand, however, which means my knowledge about them has to expand too, so I think I'll be keeping in contact with Alwyn for a long time. The image of the snake woman faded from my eyes after I walked into a diner alone for Christmas dinner. Most places, including restaurants, were normally closed on Christmas, so I was relieved to find this place open. The man at the front counter was friendly, leading me to my table with a smile and passing me my menu before returning to his earlier position. I skimmed the menu thoughtlessly for a few minutes, eyeing all the delicious-looking salads and steaks while quietly humming a holiday-themed tune to myself. Not sure which one, probably Holly Jolly Christmas or something, before my eyes flicked upwards to notice a young waitress walking towards me. She was wearing a cute red and white waitress uniform, her blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. Her jade eyes were gorgeous, and they held a special, cheery gleam in them. This was obviously her favorite day of the year, and her spirits were high to show that. She took my order. I ended up getting one of the salads, but even after she finished jotting it down on her little notepad, she still stood at my table, staring at me. I looked upwards to meet her gaze, and the happiness that reflected off of her warm smile, I quickly found out, was quite contagious. She said, "Ma'am, can you shed a little holiday cheer?" I could tell that a simple Christmas story was all she wanted to hear. My memory shifted back to that time a couple of years ago at the Bronze when I danced with that beautiful girl. The way that girl's lovely crimson lips matched her dress. How wonderful I felt when she looked at me. The gentleness of her crooked smile. I smiled upwards at the waitress, prepared, and I opened my mouth to speak. Of course. Here's my favorite Christmas story about a girl with no name. I closed my eyes for a moment, cherishing my memories, before I told my story, warmth behind every word. I said, I met her up in Sunnydale in 1999. She had a crooked smile that put me in a trance. December 24th at 11:45 when I finally gained the courage to ask her to dance. Willow? Xander, Anya, hey! I hugged my two best friends tightly in the middle of the sidewalk, not letting go until several moments later. It's been nearly 8 years since I've last seen them. Oh my God, guys, it's been so long! I pulled back, gazing at them happily. How have you been? Can't complain, Xander shrugged. Sunnydale's the same as ever. The demon count seems to be dropping recently, though. Isn't that a good thing? I asked. Oh, of course, he replied quickly. It just gets kind of boring sometimes without any vamps to dust, At least they won't go knocking down the houses I build anymore. Say what? Oh, yes, Anya began after seeing the confused look on my face. Xander's a carpenter now. He likes to build things. And I wanted to be a useful member of society, so I started working at the magic shop with some old British guy. The ex-demon wore a huge grin. Besides, our wedding used up a lot of our money, so it only makes sense for both of us to work so we can earn the money back faster. Wait, hold up, I spoke hastily, stumbling over my words. My emerald eyes as wide as saucers. You guys are married? They both smiled, and Anya gladly showed off the beautiful diamond ring that was on her finger. Oh my God, congratulations, guys. I'm so happy for you. How long ago was this? It was only about a year or so after you left, Will, Xander replied. And you're only telling me this now? I couldn't feign the hurt in my voice. I mean, my best friends had gotten married nearly 7 years ago, and they didn't even bother to mention it to me. Sorry, Will, Xander stuttered. We wanted to tell you and invite you. We even pushed back the date of our wedding by a couple months just to see if you'd come back by then. It took a lot of convincing, Anya clarified with a frown. Xander squeezed his wife's hand, but otherwise ignored her, his full attention on me. It's just, well, let's face it, Will. You left without telling us where you were going or letting us know when you were going to come back. And you gave us no phone numbers or addresses or anything, and you didn't bother to call here either, so we really didn't have any way to contact you. I withered at this, knowing he was right. I don't know why I had cut myself off from my friends like that. Maybe I just didn't want to remind myself every day of how much I missed them. Or maybe it was something deeper than that. Xander placed his hand on my shoulder, squeezing it gently. We're both really sorry, Will. And I could tell he meant it, because the look he had in his eyes was reflected in Anya's as well. I'm sorry too, I told them. This is all my fault. I should have kept in contact with you guys. Here. I scribbled down some numbers on a scrap piece of paper I had in my pocket of my winter jacket and handed it to Xander. This is the phone number of the apartment I'm currently living in. I'll be sure to let you know when I move again. Having no paper, he swiped my pen and jotted down his number on the back of my hand. Sounds fair, he said with a smile. I smiled back. So, Xander started, shoving his hands in his pockets. Anything new and exciting in the life of Willow? There always is, I retorted with a smirk. I looked around the area, content with the lonesome we had. Check this out. I allowed my feet to float off the snowy pavement, and I began flying in swift circles around them, magical rainbow shapes sparking from my fingertips. I giggled at Xander's shocked face before slowing to a stop in front of them. Remaining in the air, I grinned. Remember when I even couldn't make a pencil float? You can fly? Xander shouted excitedly. I giggled even louder. My best friend was nearly the dreaded age of 3-0, yet he was still as childish as ever. I'm glad that hasn't changed about him. Yes, I think she's made that quite clear, sweetie, Anya told her husband. But I must admit that it is impressive. It must take a good amount of concentration. It did at first, yeah, I admitted. But then I learned how to just let the magic flow from my body, and then the whole flight thing felt more natural. Walking on air is no different for me now than walking on the ground. That is awesome, Xander squealed, a large grin on his face. I was tempted to give him a chance at flying too, but decided against it when I realized that would probably cause too much of a scene. Some local bystander would surely notice. But Xander's sudden change of tone made me frown questionably. Despite the awesomeness of your new bird abilities, Will, this isn't exactly what I meant when I asked if anything was new and exciting. I cocked my head to the side, strands of my now grown-out ginger hair brushing against my face. Huh, then what do you mean? Well, the dark-haired man started, there have been some rumors about some beautiful redhead traveling around sharing her favorite Christmas story. Apparently, you're known as the Christmas story-telling traveling girl, Will. What? I blushed lightly, hoping they would just assume the redness in my cheeks to be caused by the cold. So you just assume the story-traveling person is me? How can you be so sure? Because you are, Anya responded flatly, without missing a beat. What evidence points to the person being me? Anya sighed in annoyance, as if this was the most obvious thing in the world. The story is about that girl you didn't even learn the name of, but had a lesbian affair with. My feet lost balance in the air, and I fell to the ground. I didn't have a lesbian affair with her, I blurted, blushing crimson when my friends both stared at me wide-eyed. We just, danced for a while. and had lots of smoochies." "Oh yeah," Xander replied with a sly smirk. "We remember." You remember?" I choked out of my throat. "Well, duh," Anya retorted. "It wasn't really hard to notice the two girls practically having sex in the air." A squeak passed by my lips as I buried my burning face into my hands. Xander chuckled lightly before placing his hand on my shoulder again. "We left that party pretty early, actually. Not long after 11. I was going to tell you we were leaving, but then I saw you with that girl and..." I lowered my hands to look at him straight in the eye. "The look in your eye, Will. I've never in my life seen you that happy. I couldn't find it in me to break you away from that." I smiled up at him, only now noticing the tears in my eyes. "Thank God you didn't," I laughed a little bit, all the memories of my nameless dance partner returning to me. I was only with her for a couple hours. I never even learned her name, but I was under her spells and she captured my heart. He smiled sympathetically at me, squeezing my shoulder in comfort. "And you haven't?" "No." I answered his question before he even finished asking it, a lone tear trailing down my frosty cheek. "I haven't heard from her since." Xander pulled me into a tight embrace and kissed my tears away. I melted in his arms. "I hope you run into your girl again, Will." I nodded against his chest, hugging him tighter. "I agree," Anya chimed in with a smile. "Then you two can have lots of sex like Xander and I." "Ah," Xander pulled away from me, blushing. I couldn't help but laugh. 25 years have passed since that day. Goddess, they've gone by so fast. I know that 25 years seems like a long time, but when you spend it living your dreams like I have, you enjoy your time so much that you don't even realize how fast it's been passing you. I've had my chance to see the world. I visited Greece, Japan, China, Egypt, Russia, Paris, practically everywhere. I got to meet lots of people and learn their ways of life and their celebrations. I even got to visit places not many people probably know about, hidden temples and tombs. Not like they're going to hide magical artifacts right out there in the open. Of course they had to hide them underground and have some super ninja demon guarding them. But Alwyn has taught me a lot of things through my maturing years. My magic is strong and stable. I have full trust in my control, and those demon masters were no match for me. I wouldn't be surprised if I was the strongest witch in the Western Hemisphere. Not that I'm bragging or anything. Xander and I had exchanged weekly phone calls up until the day Anya was killed. He sank into a state of utter grief and depression after that. The amount of alcohol and drugs he was consuming was so immense that I had to travel back to Sunnydale just to stop him. I fear he would have killed himself if I hadn't been in time. I don't really blame him, though, for how he was acting. I mean, to have the one you love with all your heart and soul murdered before your very eyes, and you were powerless to stop it. I probably would have been driven to insanity, too. I wouldn't even be surprised if I got corrupted by my dark magic and lost all former sense of humanity. It's too much pain for a person to bear alone. I tried to help him. I really did. But he didn't want to move forward. Mourning over Anya was all he cared about now. He knew that I would always be there to comfort him, which is exactly why he didn't want me to be near him. Comfort was the last thing he wanted. He wanted to be looked down upon with cruelty and have demands shouted in his face to prove that he could still be useful in this world. In other words, being Dracula's man-bitch. Xander had locked himself inside that dreaded vampire's creepy castle, and no matter what I did, I couldn't get him to leave. He was so far gone that even I, his best friend since kindergarten, couldn't help him. I really don't want to think about him and Anya anymore. It's too painful. I was 53 when I finally decided to end my adventures and settle down in a beautiful house in Brazil. I didn't have very much money, but that's where being a witch came in handy even more than usual. I barely had to pay for anything. I could just make it appear with magic. No cheap microwave meals for me. The house didn't really feel like home when I first moved into it. I wasn't used to staying in one place for longer than a couple of months, so this would take some heavy adjusting on my part. But just to help myself out, I hung several photos of my travels along the walls and put smaller pictures on top of tables. Some were of me with my funky sunglasses on next to an extraordinary view, while others were simply memories of my life back in high school and college. I only put 4 pictures in my bedroom, though. The first one was of me and Xander. The second one was of me and Oz. The third one was of Xander and Anya. The fourth one was of me all dolled up in my green dress, a shade, she said, that went well with my eyes, a couple of moments before I left for the Christmas Eve party at the Bronze in 1999. I'd left my house early one winter morning just to take a walk around. It wasn't very cold outside, so I had the time and patience to explore my area the natural way. I threw on a coat and a pair of gloves and then left my house, locking the door behind me. I walked lonesome on a sidewalk for a while, observing all the other houses in my neighborhood, until I finally saw 2 people walking towards me. Well, they weren't walking towards me, per se, but they were walking on the same sidewalk in the opposite direction. The more steps we all took, the more details I could see of their faces. The tall brunette was a girl I didn't recognize at all, which drew my attention to the blonde beside her all that much faster. Her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and her skin looked much more aged and scarred compared to the girl beside her. There was something familiar about the blonde girl, but I couldn't quite place it. After we got close enough to each other, I noticed that the blonde was staring at me too, frowning gently as she studied me. Her jade eyes were gorgeous, and they seemed to hold a special, cheery gleam to them. It was really bothering me who she was. The brunette was just as surprised as I was when the blonde stopped pacing a few steps ahead of me. Reacting on instinct, I halted my walking to make sure I wouldn't bump into either of them. The brunette, who looked like she was around her mid-40s, asked the older blonde what was wrong, but the blonde ignored her. "Do I know you from somewhere?" the green-eyed girl asked me, leaning her head to the side in curiosity. "I was just wondering the same thing," I replied, chuckling. She blinked, her head turning upright. "I had a feeling it was you." My brow creased in confusion. Apparently the sound of my voice had sparked her memory. "Huh? You're that traveler who told me her favorite Christmas story nearly 30 years ago." When that contagiously happy smile broke out on the blonde woman's face, I instantly recognized her. "Oh, wait," my eyes brightened. "You're the waitress from the diner." She nodded enthusiastically, content that I'd remembered her. "You've gotten pretty well known since the last time I saw you." "So I've heard," I shrugged in mild embarrassment. "Your story's being told practically everywhere now, you know," she informed me. "Even in Sunnydale." That made my body flinch with nervous excitement. "Really?" "Yep," she nodded with a smile. "I was visiting my mom there a couple years back on Christmas, and one of the very first things she told me after I walked through her door was your story." I laughed gently, shaking away my nerves. "You people make it sound like it's some legendary statement." "Well, I think it is," the blonde girl responded seriously. "And that girl, you guys haven't met up or anything?" Her question soiled my mood a bit, and I'm sure my sadness was obvious on my expression. I hoped she could read the answer in my eyes, 'cause I really didn't feel like saying it out loud. Her face softened as she gripped my hand gently. "I'm sure you two will meet again." "Yeah," I nodded absent-mindedly, a sad smile crossing my features. "I really hope so." "Okay, wait, hold on," the brunette finally entered the conversation as the blonde let go of my hand. "Buffy, who is this?" "Oh my God, Dawn, you are so slow." This bickering between them gave me the instant understanding that they were sisters. This is the girl that I served at the diner I used to work at. The traveler who shares her favorite Christmas story with everyone? Anything ringing a bell yet, Donnie? I've only mentioned this like 1,000 times. Wait, no way. Dawn's face lit up in excitement as her gaze glided over my form. Are you telling me that you're that Christmas story-telling traveling girl? The one who got put in a trance by the other girl's crooked smile, and you finally gained the courage to ask her to dance at 11:15? I nodded, smiling at her. Yep, that would be me. Oh my gosh, no way! Dawn hugged me tightly around the waist before Buffy pulled her back. I'm sorry, Dawn spoke hurriedly after she noticed my startled expression. It's just that I'm such a huge fan of your story. I mean, like, it's just so romantic. Thank you, I replied genuinely, even though my heart was slightly aching. Are you still traveling? Buffy asked me. Nope, I shook my head. I finally decided to settle down. My house is right over there, actually. Would you two like to come in for some coffee? So I gave them a tour of my house and magically made coffee pour in their cups, much to their extreme astonishment. I told them about my witchcraft, which Dawn seemed to be really interested to, and my travels, and gave them a full explanation of that Christmas Eve party at the Bronze. I don't know why I opened up to them so much. They were just so easy to talk to, and after the whole Xander incident, I really needed a friend, or at least a good acquaintance. After that day, I had found two. Buffy and Dawn had told the entire neighborhood of my arrival. Many people of all ages came to visit me and ask me about my travels. Some people might come to think of this as annoying, but I thought it was sweet. I always loved sharing my stories, even with complete strangers. A tradition had been going on ever since I moved into that house. Every Christmas Eve before dark, all the neighborhood kids, as well as Buffy and Dawn, would gather inside my house to listen to my stories about my life on the road. These people really were all I had left in my life. I always saved my favorite story for last, and they all knew it by heart. They could quote it word for word because I always told it the same. I looked down at all their smiling faces today, caressing a lock of ginger hair behind my ear, before I announced, "Here's my favorite Christmas story, called The Girl with No Name." I said, I met her up in Sunnydale in 1999. She had a crooked smile that put me in a trance. December 24th at 11:15 when I finally gained the courage to ask her to dance. 20 years have passed since I settled down in Brazil. It was a cold Christmas morning, and I was lying in a hospital bed, taking my last breaths. My heart had just refused to work with me recently. I knew I didn't have much time left. And in an attempt to cheer me up, I thought about everything wonderful I did with my life. Was best friends with Xander and Anya, became a powerful witch, got to date a cute guitarist, spent some years at college, got to travel the world and experience my dreams, became friends with Buffy and Dawn, inspired hope within children with my favorite and most famous Christmas story, got to dance with the most beautiful girl in the world. All of these memories made my cheeks color slightly, but they paled almost immediately afterwards, my heart slamming painfully in my chest. Anya was dead, Xander was probably dead, Buffy was dead, Dawn was dead. I haven't heard from Oz in over 50 years. The children had grown and moved on with their lives. And even after all these years, I never again ran into my nameless Christmas dance partner who captured my heart. I had nobody left. I was going to die alone. Well, I guess that wasn't completely true. I just remember now that there was a little old nurse sitting on a stool next to my bed, gently holding my hand. She was looking at the door to my hospital room. I couldn't see her face. I said, "Ma'am, can you share a little holiday cheer?" My voice was incredibly weak and raspy. It reeked of hopelessness, of upcoming death, and all I really wanted now was to hear a simple Christmas story to remind me of all the wonderful holidays I shared with my friends before I passed on. The nurse was silent for a while. I thought she wasn't going to say anything, but her lips eventually parted, and my eyes filled with tears at the words she spoke. Because my favorite Christmas story was the one that she told. She said, "I met her up in Sunnydale in 1999. Though I never caught her name, she was a powerful witch." She turned her head so that her sapphire eyes met with my emerald ones and squeezed my hand. "December 24th at 11:15. I'm so glad she got the courage to ask me to dance." She leaned over and kissed me tenderly. Her lips were warm, soft, and loving, just as I remembered them to be. I whimpered as she pulled away, and yes, I recognized that face like I had just saw it yesterday. Her long blonde hair was nearly completely grayed over, and her flawless skin was now covered in wrinkles. But this was still my girl. I could recognize those perfect blue eyes anywhere, even here on my deathbed, and they still shined with adoration and respect. I'm sorry that I forgot to say this on that night 53 years ago. I stared deeply into those gorgeous eyes as the sweetest voice I ever heard filled my ears, overwhelmed and bewildered. But then there it was, that gentle, heartwarming, crooked smile that put me in a trance. "It was nice meeting you, Willow." I shuddered happily, tears streaking down my face. I smiled shakily, and even though my vision was blurred, I was able to make out the letters on her name tag before I spoke my last words. "It was nice meeting you too, Tara." And that is the end of my favorite Christmas story, written by Sheena MF Fan. I really like this story. It's very different, and it was fun to read, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you like the story, you can contact the author. I have her information in the show notes. Tell her you like the story. I also recommend listening to the song that she based it off of, His Favorite Christmas Story by Capital Lights. I listened to it before I read it because I'd never read the story because I'd never heard it before. And not quite my type of music, but the lyrics really fit how she went with the story, and I quite enjoyed it and like that sort of depth to it. I probably would have tried to play the song somewhere, like maybe to close out the show or something, but I'm too afraid of copyright issues, which is probably a reason why I don't use music on this, though I'm thinking about adding some music to the podcast. But anyways, and again, if you like the podcast, please leave a rating and review on iTunes or on Stitcher, or email me with feedback. I love hearing from you guys, and I love hearing what I can. If you like the show, if you think there's something I should work on. Also, that offer to read for the show is still out there, so if you would like to read a story for the show, email me at underyourspellpodcast@yahoo.com, and let's talk about it. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.